Hello, my name's Vicky and this is the first time I've done a YouTube vlog, all new to me. For those of you who don't know me, I work in a library. Usually at this time of year, on April the 23rd, we do World Book Night. However, because we're obviously all in lockdown, it's a bit difficult to do a promotion for World Book Night when I'm not at work. So I decided that I would have a go and do a book vlog. So here we go. I hope you like it. I thought I'd begin with books I've actually got in the house. I know I can put inserts in, but I thought I'd just have a go with and have the nice books to hold in my hand to have a good feel of the books. Had a look round and to see which ones I thought I'd have a go for. So we begin with John Green's Looking for Alaska. This you'll find usually shelved under young adult / teenage, because that's apparently the age group it's written for. I say apparently because I believe, generally speaking, most books can be enjoyed by everybody. My son had asked me to read this year because there's a TV series which you can currently find on iPlayer of this book. I had read John Green before. I'd actually read The Fault in Our Stars. I read this in 2013, again because my son had asked me if I would read it, because he really loved the book at the time and the film was due for release that year. What I found out The Fault in Our Stars was it was a very good book, but I actually did find that I preferred the film of that, which isn't always the case, but I felt the characters somehow became more alive through the film in some respects than they did in the book, and I felt that the areas that perhaps didn't work well for me in the book worked much better for me coming alive in the film, which just happened. And some people will then say, I enjoyed the film, let me read the book, and there's no problem with that at all. I must admit, Willem Dafoe as Peter Van Houten was excellent in this film. I can recommend both of these. So we're moving on from Fault in Our Stars back to Looking for Alaska. I would say that this one and The Fault in Our Stars do have a similar theme in them, which I won't go into detail about because I'm sure if you read them you'll find out for yourself. But there's a lot about life and death, the meaning of death and life and aspects of life. That seems to be the running theme in these. I have to say, on this occasion, unlike with the other one, the book for me seems to be better than the series. I haven't watched all of the series as yet though, so the jury could still be out. If you're not sure about tackling a young adult book because you know it's a young adult book but you think you might like to, I would recommend Looking for Alaska. I also like the way that it's written, slightly differently to a normal kind of novel, written much more in a diary form. Then we move on to the one that I've read 2 weeks ago. It's Sophie Kinsella. This is a book that I bought for my daughter and I hadn't read. Obviously I'm at home and I wanted something to read, and I do have a lot of stock of my own, but I thought I'll try something a little bit more up to date because I have not really managed to keep up with up to date books. I have to say I did really enjoy this one and I gave it 5 out of 5. This is actually the first Sophie Kinsella that I have actually managed to read. There are hundreds of books out there, and when you work with books on a daily basis it's very difficult to necessarily get all the ones that you want, or you perhaps flick through a book in a quick 5 minutes and you're not sure whether you like it. But I know my daughter liked Sophie Kinsella. I bought her this one and she said it was great and she really enjoyed it. I picked it up and I thought I'll give it a go. I read the first chapter and I really wasn't sure, but then as the book got going and the characters became more familiar, it really started to speak to me. The characters became alive, and what I will say is Sophie Kinsella does know about office politics. She knows about how things operate in that world. All the characters for me seem to be real. What happened when I got to chapter 21 was very interesting, because chapter 21 covers a period of my life that was very similar to what happened in chapter 21, and I thought, wow, I've lived this. A slightly later period in my life than the character does in this book. Katie. It was also very interesting because she'd moved around and she'd tried to fit her accent in to where she was living, and she tried to change how she dressed and how she looked, also to match how she was living and where she was living. And as we go through the book, she discovers things about herself that make her realise, especially now as we can't get out and about, that isn't important in life. What is important in life is being yourself and realising what has happened in your life and how to move it forward and where it goes from there. If you haven't read A Stuff You Can Sell, or you've not read this one, I thoroughly recommend it. It's a very good read. Moving on, I'm going to introduce some books that probably people aren't familiar with. It begins with A Surprisingly Fluffy Bird by Jenny Chapman. I know Jenny Chapman slightly. I know her through Facebook, really. I came across her novels on a book post. I've forgotten quite how. These are actually children's books, and I think they're in the age range of about 7 to 10, generally speaking. Jenny does all her own artwork. She has a website you can purchase these books on, and she has other aspects on her website of her artwork. She has postcards and birthday cards and jute bags as well. But the stories are beautiful, and it's about Algie, a fluffy bird. This is an example of her artwork. I was sent a postcard when I had this book sent out to me. There are 3 in the series. It begins with A Surprisingly Fluffy Bird. It goes on to The Tree with a Golden Heart, and then it becomes The Magical Midwinter Star. They do actually go in that order. My favourite actually is the 3rd one, The Magical Midwinter Star. These are really beautifully written. There's lots of descriptions of countryside and animals in them. So if your children are into that kind of story, these are absolutely perfect. I read this one towards the end of last year, and it is perfect for Christmas. As an adult, I also enjoyed these books. Moving on, people who know me from years ago will know that Jane Austen is my favourite novelist, and this is my favourite of hers, Mansfield Park. I'm sure a lot of you will have read her and read Mansfield Park. Some of you will not be familiar with her novels and her writing. Of course, it's written in a much, how can I put it, a much more classical kind of style, which for me, I started reading her when I think I was about 11 or 12. I think I may have been 12 or 13, and my friend bought me for my birthday a copy of Pride and Prejudice, which I read at that age, and I really ran away with it, and I loved Jane Austen, and I read Pride and Prejudice, I think it was twice when I was younger. But it wasn't until I got to college and I was about 18, 19, and I had a friend who was studying English, and I was talking to her about Jane Austen, and she said, "Have you read Mansfield Park?" Because I'd also read Emma as well. And I said I hadn't read Mansfield Park, I wasn't familiar with it. And I got a copy of Mansfield Park, and I just loved it from the word go, and it is still my favourite. This is quite an old copy. It's still in very good condition. Again, it isn't for everybody, Mansfield Park, but if you want to give it a go and see, if you're a lover of the films or series of Jane Austen but haven't read the books, you may well want to read it for that reason and see how you think it compares. I personally haven't watched any of them because for me the books are all I need. Moving on, there was a question asked recently on a Facebook page, which books can you always read at any time? And I go back to the ones I started with when I was very small, which I'm sure most of you will be familiar with. We have The House at Pooh Corner, Winnie the Pooh. These are obviously up-to-date editions. My parents have got the original copies, or some of the original, certainly 60s produced copies, which are falling apart, and they have. And I wanted my own copies, and these are what I have. And I love Winnie the Pooh and House at Pooh Corner. I can always turn to one of these, just even pick out a chapter and really enjoy it. Even the first chapter where we're introduced to Winnie himself and Christopher Robin, it's just such a cosy feel. I'm sure everybody's familiar with Winnie the Pooh. Again, moving on to somebody that a lot of you aren't familiar with, but happens to be One of my favourite writers, again, what happened back in 1976, we were at school and we had some films on in the afternoon, and one of them happened to be Ring of Bright Water. I hadn't seen many films. We weren't a film-going family. We didn't have a TV at home at that point. And I saw Ring of Bright Water and I fell in love with that film. And I don't know how it was, but I found out that it was from a book, Ring of Bright Water, written by Gavin Maxwell. And here we have it. And I've had this copy. Yes, I got this copy in 1976. It was a Sunday school prize. So I'd obviously seen it at school early on in the term, and then for prize giving in the summer I asked for it for my prize from the Methodist Church that I went to at the time. And this is the original copy I got in 1976 and I still have it, and I've read it several times. And Gavin Maxwell is a beautiful writer. He's also written several other books in this area that relate to his life. Raven Seek Thy Brother being one of them, The Rocks Remain is another. He's also written books about shark fishing, Harpoon at a Venture, for example. He's quite a fascinating person in reality, sadly no longer with us. I've always wanted to go to Sandaig to see where he wrote this. I was intending to go this year. Sadly that isn't going to happen, but I still hope that next year my son and I will get there. And when I do, we'll be making a vlog of it. If you haven't read Gavin Maxwell and you want something different, give him a try. I love him. Moving on to, again, something more modern. Again, this is my daughter's book and it's Big Little Lies. I have just literally finished this one yesterday. You will be familiar with this if you watched the TV. This was a TV series, obviously made from this book by Liane Moriarty. Again, I gave this book 5 out of 5. I found all the characters were very good, very realistic. The book is very well written, it has a good pace to it. It doesn't slow down at any point, it just keeps a nice pace all the way through. And as each character that you read about moves on, you want to know what it is that they're keeping from their friend and how they're going to manage to keep that secret from their friend. How is it all going to end? And will the other person find out about what that person knows about them, for example? It's all very interesting. Certainly it's not a book I would normally tend to read, but I did enjoy it. I would describe it as rather like a Desperate Housewives type of a film book, if you like. Because again, they all have a certain kind of a life, apart from the odd one or two characters, and they all give out a particular impression of what their life is like. But behind closed doors, there are a lot of other things going on. It's probably a pretty familiar scene in a lot of places, but it's certainly a very good read. Here we go. Robert Galbraith, Lethal White. What can I say about these? I love Robert Galbraith. I've loved all of these books. It came out in hardback and I resisted the temptation not to order it from the library. I've been given The Cuckoo's Calling when I was out and about, and a lady offered it to me and I thought, yes, I'll take that because I know I'd like to read that and my daughter would like to read it. So obviously having been given The Cuckoo's Calling, I then went on to buy the other two in the series. So when Lethal White came out, the fourth one, I resisted the temptation and waited for it to come out in paperback. Bought it when it came out the same week, but didn't quite have enough time to pick it up because it is a huge read. There's over 700 pages in it. So it was with great delight that I managed to get it out in January and get my teeth into this book. And believe you me, you get your teeth into every single Galbraith. What she thinks up and how she manages to write these novels that have so many twists and turns and interesting information in it just blows me away. And there's always something that I can learn about from a Galbraith novel. Things that are real that you don't know about. There's always something I learn, and it's some information that you keep in your head and you think, where did I get that information from? I learned it from a Galbraith novel. I just can't wait for when the series comes out. I know it was being filmed. I don't know if it got completed. I really hope it did get completed. as I'm really looking forward to watching it. Again, this is a 5-star book. This is a very old book. This is Onions in the Stew by Betty MacDonald. In fact, this is a copy that I bought for by my mum for her birthday, and I'm hoping I can get a chance to give it to her. But the copy I read was the same as this, but it was a library copy. I was in a different library to the one I work in, and it was on display. The cover just grabbed me, and I looked in the back of it, and it's set on an island in Puget Sound. I think that's how you pronounce it. A lot of books I read are American, and a lot of those books are based in and around Puget Sound. So I thought, this is interesting. I'll read this, because this is going back to the 1950s. And it's very interesting. It's a story of how a lady and her husband find a house on an island in Puget Sound, and their exploits of getting to move into the island and their life on the island as their daughters grow up. I really enjoyed it. There's a lot of description of the islands and how their life is, and there's quite a lot of humour in it as well. I really enjoyed it. It is an old book, and I do believe she's written some others as well. I'd never come across her before. I shall certainly be giving her other books a go. Finally, here's one I read last year. This is Only One Woman, and it is by Christina Jones and Jane Risdon. I don't know how I came to know about this book. Obviously I follow a lot of book pages online, on Facebook, etc. And whether or not it popped up on there, I'm really not sure. But I certainly had been reading novels by Christina Jones, and it may have been that I may have looked on Amazon and seen it and had her name on it. That could be one way I found out about it. I really like Only One Woman, and again, I gave this 5 stars. This book is very enjoyable if you're into music. If you're into music from the 60s and the 70s, it's a really enjoyable book, because although a lot of it is fiction, you can see that a lot of it comes from a reality and a knowledge of the music business. It's also written in a very different kind of a style. There are 2 lady characters in this. You have Renza and you have Stella. And you can probably figure out from the title that, you know, it's to do with who they love and what happens to both of these characters in the book. It's to do with the band, touring and making music, but also it's written, a lot of it is written in short bursts. So if you're busy and you like to have a book to read and you're at work and you've only got 5 or 10 minutes and you just want to get a bit more book reading done, this is good for that, because it does come mainly in short bursts written by Stella or Renza. But also if you just wanted to have just think, I don't really want to read all of it at the moment, is it for me? You can pick yourself a section of this book and read it, and you will enjoy it and you'll get something from it. I don't think necessarily that you need to always get a feel of a book from the beginning, because with this it's very cleverly done, and you can do this with this book. And I'm sure if you do that, you might then think, I'll start again at the beginning and see what happens to Stella and Renza. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I will be keeping this book. A lot of books I pass on. This is a keeper. So that's all for now. I'm hoping that you will have enjoyed what I've filmed for you. I'm hoping I'm going to do some more at some point. So if you like it, give me a subscribe.